All right, we're good.
Okay, so, all right. Welcome, everyone. Let's call to order at 8:01. The Metro Vancouver Transit Police and the Police Board respects the Indigenous nations within Metro Vancouver and acknowledges all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people for their continued resilience, sustainable stewardship, and as active members of the community for generations to come. We recognize that working within and managing the region's transportation system, we do have a role to play in supporting reconciliation. Great, all right. First item up on the agenda is the consent agenda. So there are several items there. Does anyone want to pull anything from consent? George, which one do you want to pull?
E and F.
E and F. Okay. Carla? Okay. Great. All right. So can I get a motion to accept consent agenda of S, B, F, and G? Go. Second. Great. All in favor? All right. Let's talk about E then, George.
Well, just it really, again, it's one of these things where it's such a substantial opportunity with Transit Police year-end financial result. And I think it's important in this public environment to indicate that in these tough times in which many organizations spend more than planned and don't meet budget, Transit Police did. Our operating results were such that we came in at 45.9 million, which is actually $4,000 under. And just a compliment to, I would say, the staff, senior leadership, to be able to manage a budget during some pretty difficult times. We know it includes the BPD massive increase to the collective agreement, also tied into the cost. But it was just really that, along with, I'd say, the board keeping an eye on this. And I think just because we're in a public session, it's important to acknowledge that these are tough times, tough decisions, priorities have to be made. The right ones without interfering with any public safety issues and so on. But I think we as a board recognize our duty to make sure that we're delivering on the budgets that we put together and we approve through the finance committee. So I just really wanted to point that out because it's significant in this day and time where we can come in on budget actually a few $1,000s under.
Great points.
Thank you. And I just want to echo my colleagues' comment and just want to let everyone also know that the finance committee has reviewed the year-end financials and thoroughly with management. We're certainly happy with the results. Thank you.
Thanks very much. You also pulled F as well.
Well, F was just the board, the chief relationship policy. And again, just because we're in a public session, this came about just as a kind of an ongoing, it's the evolution as we have with our board and working with the chief and obviously with the new chief in place. It was a time for us to reaffirm the governance aspect that we have and the relationship and to update that with the chief to ensure that everybody knows that we're doing our due diligence and that we are a oversight body. We're not getting involved in the operations, but we're here to ensure the policies and the aspects of the organization are meeting with the needs of people we serve, which is public and the users of the transit system. So I think it's just important to note that we never forget why we're here and who we represent, and then the relationship we have with the chief and senior leadership and the staff.
And Carly, full compliments.
Yeah,
my favorite.
I know. I just wanted to, I'd like to pull it because I think it's really important I'm glad it's included here. And I just noted that the OCC dispatch, there are a number of positive compliments on the 877 texting and how accessible and how good it is and how it is increasing the sense of safety. So just wanted to note that.
And being used extensively, which is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So it's a really great service. And as a transit user myself, I see people on there noting that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right. Can I get a motion to accept those three items, E, F, and G? In favor? All right. Public delegations, Karen, do we have any?
We do not.
No. All right. So now we get to welcome Nancy. She's here from Ecom to give us a little presentation. So welcome, Nancy. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. So my name is Nancy Blair. I'm Chief Transformation Officer at Ecom 911. My background is in strategy and transformation. Most of my career is in the private sector though. So my last role before Ecom, I was with Mountain Equipment Co-op, where I led the technology, the e-commerce business, and the call center operations. So at Ecom, I'm responsible for the transformation plan. So this is a really comprehensive effort where I sort of joke, we're kind of changing everything. And our three objectives of the transformation plan are essentially so we can consistently achieve our service targets. Oh, thank you very much. We can build a scalable, sustainable organization, and we can improve our cost to serve. So we've been undergoing this transformation, and one of the key pillars of that transformation is NG 911. So George, as a board member of Ecom, has asked me to come today to give you a little bit of insight into what is NG and what are some of the implications for the transit police. So today I'll cover these topics. There will be lots of time at the end to have some questions and discussion, and if there are any points that I've missed. So before I dive into NG, I just wanted to take a minute, and it's probably a very obvious statement, but I do want to emphasize it. Technology will play an increasingly important role in public safety communications. So why is that? One, public expectation. We have younger generations that communicate and relay information in a very different way than certainly our generation. We also have an opportunity for public safety improvement. So imagine the types of information that we can provide to our first responders so that they can keep the public safer. We also know that there will be lots and lots of data and information out there that can help us plan better, help us understand how we can handle our capacity with the demands that we have. And then there's also this aspect that we know volumes and demand for public safety are just going to continue to increase. And we cannot keep collectively adding cost to the system as that capacity and demand for our services increases. So how can we use technology to become more efficient, to become more scalable, to adapt to the types of new things that we're experiencing, the variability in volumes, the uncertainty in the external environment. So technology will play an increasingly important role, and NG is really a key platform that will help us leverage some of these key benefits of technology. You know, I think for me, we have amazing humans in the public safety or across our public safety organizations. We need to make sure that we're focusing them on what humans can do best: problem solving, critical thinking, empathy, and then really think about how then can technology support them in doing that. So NG, what is NG? And sometimes I say NG, sometimes you'll hear next generation, sometimes you'll hear NG 911. It all refers to next generation 911. So currently, when someone calls 911, it goes through landline technology. And this landline technology is about 30 years old. And it connects into a very old, very antiquated call handling system at Ecom. Next generation is a digital network. So we call it an internet protocol, or IP for short. So in the future, when you call 911, it will go through a digital network and connect in with a brand new modern call handling technology, which will then be used to downstream to police, fire, and ambulance. This is something that is federally mandated. So the CRTC is governing it. Public safety answering points, PSAPs, do not have a choice. We have to go to next generation 911. Now, the good news is that this system comes with lots of great enhanced capabilities, and I'll cover those in a couple slides. But essentially, it will change the way responders communicate and the types of information potentially that they could have. It also gives us an opportunity to do a lot more information sharing and data collection, which should help us plan from a capacity and volume perspective. So when do we have to have NG 911 implemented? So in terms of timeline, CRTC has said that we have to have NG 911 implemented by March 2025. So that's not very far away. And the CRTC mandate also includes that they're going to decommission the old network on that date. And that is the current state. Nothing has changed from that. And just as a reminder, when we talk about NG 911, there's the network piece that connects in with the call answering technology. So TELUS is our telecommunications provider that was selected for the West. They have successfully implemented the network aspect. So they've been able to spin up a system that has that voice capability on the NG 911 network. But very few PSAPs have actually integrated into that system. So far, 3 organizations across Canada have implemented this. One in the West, Strathcona, which is a small community in Alberta. So very few organizations have successfully implemented. So ECOM, as well as a number of other organizations, have put submissions into the CRTC to ask them to relook at that March 2022 date and consider extending it, particularly the aspect of decommissioning the old network. So it is a very complex technology project, but in BC, we also have lots of considerations around the governance. And so for the ECOM project, our technology project is progressing, but what isn't progressing is the signing of the local governing agreements between TELUS and the regional districts. Right now, only 12 of 27 have signed, and TELUS is saying that they will not, very technical term, flip the switch on the new network until we get all those local government agreements signed. And so from an ECOM perspective, we feel there is a tremendous risk that that date will not be met because we have not sorted out the governance aspect. And I'll speak a little bit more about governance in a second. So once we actually get it implemented, what are some of the benefits of NG 911? For me, it really is all about improved public safety. This includes exact caller location and caller tracking, which I think will be really beneficial, particularly in rural areas. So right now in our current system, we have something called the Annie Alley. Don't ask me what that stands for, but essentially we can see that a person is phoning from a certain intersection. Fast forward to NG, not only will we see what intersection, we'll see what building, and then they can tell that we're phoning from the 3rd floor. So it's very precise location data, which will really help first responders with location of the incident. Another important feature of NG is real-time text. So if you can imagine in sensitive situations such as domestic abuse or for the hearing impaired, a home invasion, is somebody will be able to text in real time 911. This is something that will be available on the system in 2025. I think as a province, we haven't yet decided when or how we will roll out real-time text. There's also live transfer to other emergency services. So for instance, if I have a friend in Toronto, I'm concerned about my friend or having suicidal thoughts. Right now, me in Vancouver, I can phone 911 and I can get connected and get help with the Toronto PSAP for my friend. So there's a lot more interoperability across Canada on this network. Then if we sort of fast forward for a few more years out, there's an opportunity for direct submission of image, video, live streaming. You know, this is something that we will have to debate and discuss as a public safety community. What are the privacy considerations? Will this actually help first responders? Will they have time to absorb this type of information? Some of the Organizations in the states have started this, some decided not to. That is something that we'll need to consider both the positives and the other considerations for video and live streaming. There's new options for mental health and social emergency services. We can think about our triage of mental health incidents. So potential to stream to organizations like Crisis Lines or HealthLink BC. So how do we better tailor the response to the incident that's happening? So this is something that can be enabled through NG. Better support for Indigenous communities and diverse populations. So if we can think about better language services, language assistance, routing calls to different cultural call takers that can help different groups of people. There's also an opportunity for better information sharing across first responders. So what information can be shared between police, fire, and ambulance in terms of order of dispatch, type of information that's shared. And then if we think even further in the future, I'm having a heart attack, my watch recognizes that. It immediately calls 911 and transmits my vital signs to the first responders. So this is a network that can handle huge loads of data and information. And as a society, we need to think about it as first responder and safety professionals, how will we use that data and information to keep our public safe? So with that, there's lots of policy and governance considerations. I've already mentioned a few of them. We need to think about privacy, especially with the data that's going to be shared. We also have to think about timing. When will we implement real-time text? What is our messaging going to be to the public? Do we want them to use it? Do we want them to use it only during exceptions? These are the types of questions that we'll need to answer. When will we implement new functionalities such as the video or the images? What should our abandoned call policy be? So for instance, right now, when you phone 911 by accident, there is a slight switching delay in the system when it goes from the landline to ECOM's call handling system. So you have a microsecond to hang up when you realize you made a wrong call. And we estimate that represents about 20,000 calls a year. So those never hit our call handling system, but in the NG world, there is no delay. So we will get all of those hangups. And right now we have a policy that we call back 2 times to determine if this is indeed a distressed call. So you can imagine the human resources impact of having to handle 20,000 more calls and somebody phoning back 2 times. So we are looking at a technology solution that has an automated confirmation about whether this is a direct distressed call, but we definitely need to look at the policies around abandoned calls and also abandoned real-time text as well. ECOM has been lobbying for a provincial mandate, and yes, it is definitely a lot about the funding aspect. We are asking the government for a cell phone call answer levy. Thank you to the police chiefs for their letter of support in that. We feel we need a more sustainable funding source for 911 and emergency call taking in the province. But it's not just about the money, it's about the governance, about the decision-making, about the mandates. Right now, I would describe it as kind of ECOM herding cats in that regard. And if we had some provincial leadership in this area, it will be a lot easier as we think about our energy journey. Finances. There is a financial impact. It is a more expensive system. Why is that? We have an enhanced need for redundancy and resiliency. CRTC has a mandate for certain layers of technology so that if the system goes down, there's many layers of backup. There's also greater risk from a cybersecurity perspective because this is a network. We have to monitor this network on a 24/7 basis. It's a dynamic system. So in the past, TELUS put down the copper lines 30 years ago and there hasn't really been any changes, maybe a few fixes here and there. This system will be dynamic, will constantly be improving and changing. And so you need the skills and the change management to continue on that journey. There'll be huge and bigger amounts of data that's flowing through this. We'll need new skills and capabilities. It's new technology, cloud technology, cybersecurity, data and analytics. All of those skill sets are very, very in demand in the private sector. and now we need to attract them to the public sector. And then certainly market conditions, we've heard about the inflation. Our exchange rate isn't helping us. We source a lot of this from other places. And many organizations are moving from this capital model of technology investment to an operating model, so that expenses, instead of being spread out over a 5-year period, are hitting income statements in the same period. So there is a financial impact, and it does cost more than the existing system. So what? So what does this mean for the Transit Police Board? What are some things for you to think about? So immediately, there really isn't an impact. So you don't receive 911 calls. So there's really no need for a technology upgrade. You can continue as business as usual. But some things to think about is that your municipal partners will have more information than you do on your incidents. So that may or may not be an issue. Public expectations will start to change about what is an emergency response and what information is included. And real-time text, there might be some confusion between your text versus a real-time text. So there might be some public experience type considerations. I've just put a few questions for you to think about as you think about NG 911. And I think my first question is, this really isn't about NG 911. I would ask you, what problem are you trying to solve? What are the drivers? What are the benefits and costs? Does becoming a PSAP make sense for the transit police? Does going to NG make sense? I'll give an example from ECOM. So for our non-emergency service, we decided not to go to NG 911. So our drivers there we needed to be more customer service oriented. We weren't as Adam well knows, we weren't answering our calls. We needed to manage the public's expectation. And so we're going live on May 8th with a system that will do callbacks, that will tell callers what the wait time is, that will have much more dynamic, more of a customer service type system than NG, which is all about security, availability, uptime. The changes will take time. HealthLink BC decided the same thing. They're joining us on using this Genesis system, which is much more customer service oriented. BC Ambulance has decided not to put their non-emergency calls on NG as well. So the question for you to ask is, what problem are you trying to solve? Are there key situational awareness or all the amazing communication benefits you'll get from NG? Are those gaps right now? Could you see NG as potentially filling those gaps? Is running your own ECC a core capability? Is this something that you want to invest in, or does it make more sense to partner? What is that investment? And it's not just technology, it's people, it's process, it's cybersecurity, it's the data and analytics. What do you have to do now? And what do you have to do if you think about becoming a PSAP in the future? And I like to use this word optionality. If you don't want to make a decision now and there's no urgency to make a decision, what can you do now so that it leaves the options open for something to answer some of these questions in the future? So lots to think about as a board, as you look at some of the new technologies and new capabilities that are coming on. I know for me, I'm very excited about the possibilities of NG. I outlined a few today, but I think it's one of those things where we don't know what we don't know. And there'll be a lot more use cases as we get the information as we continue on this journey. So with that, I will open it up for questions.
Great. Any questions from the board? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Great presentation, Nancy. I just want to say, since your arrival at Ecom, you've been fantastic. You've done a really good job, and I hope that you're going to be the future of Ecom, staying there for the long term, because I have noticed your experience that you brought as a transformation officer. You've made a real difference there, and are such a huge part of the transformation at Ecom, and we really appreciate it. Wearing my day job hat, I will say. My question for you is, when you talked about other agencies that have gone to NG 911, you mentioned Strathcona, which is a smaller region. However, Peel Regional Police Service is a big region and they've gone to it. I'm just curious if we know their experiences, pros and cons, kind of how that's playing out.
Yeah, so we are in contact with Peel as well as Strathcona. Our situation is more akin to Peel because of the size. I think it's one of those things where all technology projects have bumps and issues along the way. I don't think there's anything outside the norm of their experience. So, I think we've gained some lessons learned from them, which is really make sure that we're doing that user experience testing. I think it's one of those things that they found is that, they had tested the system out more from a technology perspective, and they didn't spend as much time understanding the impact on call takers. And so, maybe just a little bit of a deep dive into that. Our call takers are amazing. They're the ones that need the kudos. For them, they don't have very much control of their workday. They don't decide when calls come in. They don't decide the severity of the calls. They have a work type that is much beyond their control. So even if we're moving a button from here to here, this is a huge change for them. And so they hold on to the way things were in the past. So I think what Peel found is that the technology part actually worked pretty well. There were a few bumps, but what they needed to spend more time on is helping the call takers with this new system. And even though there weren't huge changes to the new systems, for the call takers, it felt like a big change. So I think what we took away and in our transition plan, we're spending a lot of time really helping the call takers on this new system. But so far, it's working, calls are coming, there haven't been any outages. I think we're encouraged by the technology portion of it.
Have they done any sort of sampling of the public, how they're receiving it or how they're?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, it's still really new. And for the public, at this point, there isn't a lot of change. So there isn't real-time text yet. It's probably more about the call quality, but they haven't done it. I think that's I feel like one of the things I'm trying to bring from the private sector is this whole idea and concept of customer experience. So the public's experience.
Right.
So let's do those surveys. Peel hasn't done that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. Amazing to think what technology, is and can do going into the future. Privacy considerations are always sort of so top of mind, and of course, this comes that challenge. And so, if you have additional thoughts, I'd love to hear them. And then when you have a large regional police like Peel doing this, much about how they're starting to tackle this, because it's big. There's lots of big questions there.
Yeah, so on the privacy end, absolutely, this is a big aspect. And I think the good news is that we've got some time, right? Because right now, when we go live, I'm a big fan of iteration. So really, the first phase, there's not going to seem like much difference to the public, right? They may, again, you're not getting that slight switch delay on a landline. The lines might be clearer, but beyond that, there's really not a lot of difference. So, the first phase, it is really a replacement of a technology. And then when we think about the journey, I think we'll have to do a lot of public consultation, first responder consultation, privacy, and different community group consultation about what makes sense, particularly on the video and the images. I think it's interesting. I've kind of gone through a bit of a journey on that. At first I was like, wow, this is going to be amazing. Amazing. Imagine, one of Adam's or one of your officers being able to get a live stream of the incident. But then when you step back, that also exposes a lot more people to secondary trauma. So our call takers who are already experiencing trauma, just listening to the incident, could now have visuals of the incident as well. So the secondary trauma. You also think about misuse of that and misuse of the videos and what people can do with AI. You also wonder, so speed is of the essence, particularly on fire. Do we want our first responders to be looking at the video versus concentrating on getting to the scene? So I think, it's one of those things where, it's a bullet point in a presentation about, wow, isn't this cool, like video? But then when you back it up, it's like, what? Yeah. There's just a lot of things that we need to think about so that we're not misusing, and we're asking ourselves, well, what problem are we trying to solve with this, and will this help? Yeah. Peel hasn't really started that journey because, again, we're just at the very beginning and they're just trying to make the technology work. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary.
Murray, you have a question? Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Learned a lot just listening to it today. And I would say, a couple of things surprised me. One of the things, if someone would have asked me before this meeting what NG 911 means, I probably would have concentrated on things like real-time text and video and image transmitting to assist the responders, both the call takers and the emergency responders, to deal more efficiently with the calls that are coming in. And yet, what I'm learning now is those aren't part of the initial rollout. And that surprises me, quite frankly, because I would have thought that that was, one of the principal or two of the principal reasons why we were moving from the current system to a new system. So my question in alignment with that comment is, how quickly will we be moving to include real-time texting and video and image transmission to assist in better coordinating emergency response to distress calls?
Good question. I think the answer is a little bit, it depends. And the key thing it depends on is whether we as a province can get these local government agreements signed so that we can move forward with phase 1 by March 2025. And as soon as we're live on the system, in our plan, we're looking at real-time text about 6 months after the time. So if we think about the March 2025 date, we're looking at that real-time text in around the 6 months later. However, CRTC, given the state of readiness of the country, they are looking at potentially delaying the availability of real-time text. So right now they're saying to organizations, you can start implementing it as of March 2025, but that date is in question. Video and images, I think there's a big question mark and an unknown about that. I think CRTC has not set a mandate on that. They've left it to individual jurisdictions. And as we've been talking about, I think there's lots and lots of considerations and discussions, because it wouldn't just change how we as the PSAP handles it, but it would change operationally how first responders work as well. So that is going to take some time. So, I know for some people, they think, well, this first implementation of NG, there's really not going to be a lot of big benefit. In my mind, the big benefit is threefold. One is we're getting rid of a 30-year-old system that is starting to fray. Two, from an e-com perspective, we're getting rid of a call handling system that is end of life and is not stable. And three, we're laying a platform that we can continue to iterate and add this functionality. So, and I think for me, because this is so big and with potential change management, it's important to do it in an iterative way as opposed to just a big bang with huge amounts of change.
Yes, my only comment in response to that is that collectively, as people overseeing decisions regarding emergency call taking, we should be careful that we don't oversell what we're doing. And I think there's been kind of in my mind, based on my experience in this, it almost feels like it's been oversold with respect to what's being delivered in March of 2025.
Yeah, that's good feedback, and I'll bring that feedback along. Because March 2025, for most people, they won't notice any difference whatsoever.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on the presentation and the road to transformation. There's no question a 30-year-old system has exhausted its useful life. So my question is on the digital platform on your NG 911, and I'm interested to know the platform that you're using. How does that compare to other jurisdictions across the world? And the real question is that by the time you adopt it, how advanced is NG 911 compared to where everyone else is leading it? And then part B of the question is that how are you incorporating artificial intelligence into this NG 911, or what degree?
Sure. So maybe I'll just talk about the two components of NG. So the network, I think the network itself, it is, the latest in technology. It is a network that is being used across North America. I feel very confident in the future proofing of the network. Ecom is implementing a via Commutel system to do the call handling. I would say that it is older technology. We have looked at going to a cloud-based model immediately and kind of leapfrogging, but there were a number of technical difficulties with that. So we kind of went more with the tried and true via Commutel combination. Many jurisdictions are using that same combination. There are others available. Motorola has a combination. There are other NG specific ones. I would say we are using the basic one. And, back to the cost, we are going to be iterating and needing to upgrade in the future. But I think given our values, our principles of availability and reliability, we chose the safe, probably older technology as the first phase. In terms of AI, right now, there's no AI. I think, again, it's all about change management. If I can use an example from our non-emergency, we're moving to a cloud-based system for our non-emergency. It took us a very long time to convince our partners that this was safe technology and that it had the appropriate privacy and security threats. And so in public safety, cloud, AI, it's all very new. And so we need to make sure that the technology is safe. And that we're bringing our partners along with this. So will AI be part of it? Absolutely. Is it part of this first instance? No.
Thank you.
Questions, Maureen?
Just a personal comment. So I really appreciate the presentation today, and it is so valuable from a public safety perspective and police perspective. I'll just give you some context here with regards to not with Ecom. We had a homicide in Whistler in a very public place in front of a very high-end hotel, because they live streamed what they had, and they gave it to us. We were able to capture, arrest key evidence and people on their way out of Whistler from the hit. So it does provide dividends to us, because with regards to public safety, you're looking at, okay, what you know, when you know what to do about it. And with regards to that, within a half hour, we had the suspects in custody, and then we had their vehicle. And that live streaming allowed our members on the street to say, these are the people that did it. And when you look, hey, we have them right here. They probably took the wrong way out of Whistler, because it's 2 ways to go, but we got them in within 30 minutes. And so I would say never underestimate the derived benefits from like a video. And I do realize it's going to be in the cloud, and you have to do it right. It's no different than with body worn camera, and that's in the cloud, and it's all interchangeable, and disclosure and who has the rights to do what. But I'm really excited. And as Adam said, you're so value added to Ecom, because you come up with solutions and you're out of the box thinker. And thank you for what you do, and never underestimate anyone's impact with regards to public safety, because it's a good news story. When we had that live stream, it was great. I mean, and we also want to try and avoid trauma where we can, but policing can be trauma. We have to be trauma informed, but it's better to do it, get the people off the street, than to continue on with other crimes of opportunity. So I really appreciate that, and I'm good with that. Thank you.
Oh, that's a really helpful comment. It was actually in Whistler that day. So I'm so happy that you're able to apprehend the suspect quickly. I think no doubt there is that benefit. I think my only caveat is that we just need to think about how and when, and a change management around how we roll this out, when we roll this out, and just do it in a thoughtful way. So And the good news is, I mean, bad news, good news to your point, Sam, is that, you know, the US is far ahead of us on this NG journey. So they are doing it, they're making mistakes, they're learning, and we can take all sorts of learnings from them. I am a firm believer in not reinventing the wheel. So others have done this before us. So I think the fact that Canada is a bit behind on NG will at least be able to learn from other jurisdictions. So thank you.
We want to make sure whatever we capture or what we obtain for evidence is it's disclosable. And we don't want to lose something in court because we don't have the proper processes in place with regards to disclosure. Yeah, thank you.
Just thanks again, Nancy, for doing this, and to the full board. This is just kind of a piece of what is going on at Ecom. I know there's going to be a further presentation probably later this year on a whole bunch of other aspects. And to Adam's point, that certainly Nancy has led the way in terms of the kind of the umbrella aspects on transformation. It includes a whole bunch of other things, people and culture, the financial way that we do the analytics and the reporting out, all the technology, the cybersecurity, and so on that's being discussed. And there'll be more of that coming up, I think, as we kind of move forward with further discussions with Ecom and what that transformation is going to mean. And that will have impacts on the entire region and hopefully the entire province once we can get this done. It's going to take a period of time. I get one quick question at the end is we got a very major event in 2026 with the FIFA World Cup, talking about delays and so on. Is this going to be in place and available, especially I would assume to transit police and the VPD where most of the activity will be?
Yeah, I'll use the same response I gave to Maria, as it depends if we can get sort of everybody aligned, these agreements signed and implemented so that we can make the March 2025 deadline. We should, I think the easy answer is yes. I mean, 2026 is still a ways away. We're well underway. I think my goal would be to have the NG system in and real-time text in, because I think an event like that where you've got lots and lots of noise, the ability to do a real-time text to 911 would be incredibly valuable. So I think that that's a good objective to have is for us as a province to have real-time text by FIFA.
Do you have a sense when the province may provide a decision relative to the cell phone levy?
We had hoped before the election, but it's likely not to come before the election. So I think our new hope is January. We've had an extensive advocacy campaign. UBCM has been very supportive in that as well. We're just finalizing a governance review that we've done independent parties talking about the way Ecom is governing funding just doesn't make sense right now. So we're hoping that all of these things will align and that the province will come forward, but nothing for yet.
Thank you.
Final thought? Questions? Great. Thank you, Nancy. Obviously, we're all very interested. Lots of good questions. So thank you very much for coming. You're welcome to stay for the rest. Exciting stuff.
Hey guys, hey guys, it's Sean. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sure. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Nancy, thanks for the presentation. That was helpful to kind of understand, the buzzword that we've been hearing for a long time. So really good presentation. My question is actually for the chief and for the organization. Just curious about how this is on our roadmap internally with our call center. And call takers and integration and kind of what planning or work is being done around that.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Sean, and something that we're very alive to. And thank you, Nancy, for such an informative presentation. Our partnership with Ecom is a very important one. We really value that. So they've been very much of assistance in terms of sharing their expertise as we plan our roadmap forward. Deputy Ferland's been working closely. We've been looking at not only the report that we had completed by a consulting firm that contains some of that information, but liaising with other police agencies who are also non-emerged to determine kind of what makes sense in those next steps, and some of those questions posed today are forming kind of part of that analysis, how we proceed as an organization.
Thanks.
All right, thanks very much. Thanks, Nancy. All right, let's move on to the next item is Chief Officer Report.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Chair, members of the board, everyone. So again, back to ECOM, thank you for that partnership. I also want to recognize the 3 comments by the board this morning, recognizing the work within our organization related to compliments for the OCC, budget related and otherwise. I think it's so meaningful to bring that feedback back to our members and teams. So thank you for those acknowledgements. We will be providing our overall update, and I'll be turning it over to Deputy Ferlin, who will begin with the operations update.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I know you have received the Chief Officer Report, so I'll just go over some of the highlights. And there's many things going on in operations and excellent work going on by the membership. So in the patrol section for training, we had 26 patrol officers and community safety officers attend the King George SkyTrain station for a train lifting exercise. And that was organized by our partners at the BC Rapid Transit Company, better known as SkyTrain. And we provided a safety and familiarization to our 410 Surrey Police Service members, focusing on the 4 stations that are in the community of Surrey for that. In terms of initiatives and projects that we have utilized site funding for, so that's specialized investigations and targeted enforcement. And so that's a provincial funding model that has really allowed our patrol members and our plainclothes units to tap into this pool of money to really do some targeted enforcement. So a few minor ones that we've done under that. We did a 1-day project with the Richmond RCMP, resulting in 17 files, 16 arrests, including 10 releases on appearance notices for new charges, a warrant, and 1 director's warrant. And we have done a number of high visibility patrols in partnership with our transit security. We also worked with our station attendants as part of enhanced visibility patrols at 2 identified stations in Surrey and Vancouver. And additional key locations were the Newton Exchange, Scottsdale Exchange, Scott Road Station, King George Station to Surrey Central Station, and buses stopping at the Hastings Commercial, Granville, Georgia, and Hastings Renfrew. And typically our high visibility patrols are intelligence based, so we'll look at the analytics and try and deploy our officers there when it's intelligence led and where we will have the greatest impact. As well, a really exciting and in preparation for FIFA is we did a tabletop exercise focused on guideway intrusions and sudden deaths. And this tabletop had representation from the TransLink enterprise. So that included the Canada Line, Coast Mountain Bus Company, BC Rapid Transit, again SkyTrain, also the Vancouver Fire Department, and 8 of our operational members. So it was excellent that they had a chance to kind of sit together, build those relationships, and as well identify any areas that we can work on so that we are better aligned for these big events such as FIFA that are coming up. We also did a high visibility patrol that was initiated by one of our squads in the Langley Central Surrey area, so better known as the kind of the Logan bus loop. So they conducted 8 days of proactive patrols with transit security, Langley bylaws, and the Langley RCMP, creating 20 police files, 6 violation tickets, and 27 fare infraction notices. But patrol officers really were there to disrupt what we had been told, which was like an open air drug market in that area that was obviously making our transit users feel unsafe in that area. So they were able to address that by having their visible presence there and conducting some of those initiatives. And we received numerous positive comments on the increased perception of safety from the ridership, retail businesses, and also our coach operators who are in that area, obviously, as a significant bus loop in the Langley area. So on to our investigation section. So our general investigations unit, again, always very busy. Just one key file that they had in February. So we had a passenger on a bus in Vancouver that was struck in the head with a skateboard. And as the suspect exited, they used their skateboard to then break 2 windows on the bus. The suspect then struck a second victim. And we were lucky enough with the assistance of our crime analyst to identify that subject, and were able to facilitate an arrest. And the suspect was released with conditions not to be found on any public transit. So a good outcome on that one. Our crime suppression team, so this is our plainclothes unit that really tries to do short-term projects in and around areas that have again been identified through intelligence. And they are always incredibly busy and have excellent results. So a few of the things that they were doing in the last couple of months, in February, they joined with the Surrey RCMP Crime Reduction Unit to conduct a 1-day boost and bust project at the Guildford Mall. And that yielded 10 arrests and 4 new charges for theft under being forwarded. In March, they assisted New Westminster Police Services Street Crime and Gang Unit with Project Hailstorm. And this was targeting drug trafficking and violent offenders in New West, mainly around the New West and Columbia stations. And they patrolled known hotspots, conducting proactive police work. 3 individuals were arrested, a stolen vehicle recovered, and several intelligence files created. As well, the crime suppression unit, along with our partners at the New West Police Department, facilitated a week-long drug investigators course here at Transit Police. We had 17 attendees from Transit Police, Port Moody, New West, Delta, and the RCMP. And a crime intelligence unit, or analytical unit, since the last reporting period, they've identified 27 persons of interest as suspects in different investigations, which has resulted in 10 charges being submitted and 7 suspects under investigation. So we've got a small criminal intelligence unit, and they are doing some exceptional work in support of our patrol members and our plainclothes units. So the next pillar I'll focus on is our engaged community partners, our operational support section community engagement team. So our neighborhood police officers attended 77 events, including safety presentations to SkyTrain, Coast Mountain Bus, community safety presentations to local schools and organizations, the ICBC Distracted Driver Enforcement Campaign with TMET, which is our targeted mobile enforcement team, and a boost and bus project with Transit Police Patrol teams. Our mental health liaison officer delivered a presentation to both the Canadian Mental Health Association and Translink Leadership Town Hall focused on mental health files on public transit. Our police detection dog service provided demonstrations to our community safety officer classes, transit security, youth groups, SkyTrain, and Candleline attendants. And the presentation focused on the function of our dogs, as well as how to identify and deal with unattended and suspicious packages in and around the transit system. And during this reporting period, our police dog service assisted our policing partners on 11 files, resulting in clearing of suspicious packages or bomb threat-related calls. Our community safety officer program, which we've spoken often about, we had our Class 2 graduate in March 2024, and Class 3 is scheduled to begin at the end of this month, which should bring our total complement of community safety officers up to 24. And we did have 3 of our Class 1 community safety officers also successful in applying to become regular members with the Transit Police, and they will be moving on to the JIBC for their training. So we're very proud of that. And it's our community safety officers, almost like the farm team of Transit Police regular members, and it's a great opportunity for them to have an opportunity to see if they enjoy policing, get a feel for what Transit Police and our organization brings, and we're very excited to see that 3 of them moved on to that sworn member status, or will be once they complete the training at the JIBC. And lastly, the OCC, so our Operations Communication Center, and we've heard of all the changes that will be happening over the next few years in that realm. But the Transit Police became a member of the Association of BC 911 Service, so it's called the ABC 911 Group. And this organization is devoted to the safe and effective operations of BC's 911 system, as well as continuous improvement. And the organization has tri-service working group comprised of police, fire, and ambulance across the province who meet each month to discuss these issues. And also for us and our statistics here, through the Police Records Information Management Environment, or PRIME as it's known. In February 2024, we've got a new feature which allows us to track files that are being transferred from our police partners. So that's one of our metrics that we wanted to see, how many files that were moving from jurisdictional police to us, so that we can now track that effectively and be able to report that to the board in future reporting periods through our KPIs. And certainly last but not least, our targeted mobile enforcement team. In March, they took part in the ICBC Distracted Driving Month Awareness Campaign and wrote 216 distracted driving tickets. They are an amazing unit that are very, very productive, and such an important initiative as we know how much distracted driving can impact the safety of the community. And these were focused on areas in and around transit centers. So obviously we've got people coming to and from stations, bus loops. So they focus their efforts there to support the safety of our transit users. And lastly, they have conducted field training with our community safety officer class 2. And this is to ensure they get the best possible understanding of enforcement of fair paid zones. And they were shown how to do enforcement on SkyTrain, Canada Line, SeaBus buses, and the West Coast Express. And that is, if you can believe it, a short snip. Although it didn't seem short, and I can get some air now. Just some of the fantastic work that the operations unit has been doing, of which I'm very proud to lead and very proud of the results that we have to report today.
I think that just speaks to some of the work under the cross-regional policing and engaged community partners, pillars that are being done. And we'll turn it over to Deputy Bryce Graham. We'll talk about our work in moving forward the pillar of a modern police culture.
Sure. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm just going to touch and pull a couple highlights out of the report. So as kind of mentioned earlier, we did hire 6 for our next May class through the JI. 3 of those did come in-house with their own CSOs. We also recently hired a junior lateral count and another 10 folks for our CSO program. So in a short period of time, that's 17 people hired through the recruiting section, which is a tremendous amount of work that we've been able to accomplish in the first quarter of this year. Another item that we're proud of and that our recruiting unit was very much part of in collaboration with TransLink. We hosted a Canadian citizenship swearing-in ceremony. So here at Saperton, so it was a very unique experience, something that we'll love to kind of repeat in the future. Very, very great opportunity kind of for our members. The training unit has also started the delivery of our Indigenous training. I know at least there's a couple of board members that either have attended or will be attending. We've been able to get some really good collaboration with some community members who've been able to come out and tell their stories. It's some training that we've worked very, very hard to complete and we're very proud of. So that is in kind of full steam and mid-process at this point. Within our IMS, we also did a complete audit of our exhibits room and how we process our exhibits and done a full review. Report will be pending on that, but just appear to be kind of any issues in the first instance coming out of it. We also created a benefits brochure for family members. So we know that when somebody comes into the policing, it's right away, it's such an overwhelming feeling. They're coming in, there's all these systems to learn, they're going to the JI, it's massive overload, you're getting so much information in a short period of time. So what we've done is we've created a benefit package or pamphlet or brochure that we hand out now. So not only when you get their intake and everything goes up over their head, but it's there for them and their family members. So they're aware of the benefits that they have, what's there for them to help them through, as well as to help family members through as well. We've completed our IT roadmap, which I believe will be presented to this board at a future date here in a short period of time. So with consultation with some consultants, we've come in and developed a roadmap for IT going future. And we've also enhanced a bunch of the technology in and around our sub offices. We've looked to upgrade our computers. We've looked to upgrade our internet speeds to fiber and as well as other options as well. So we continue to do that. Thank you.
Great. No comments?
Yeah, just open if there's any questions, and evident a lot of work occurring, and just really want to recognize leadership that's leading it, but also all the people within the organization driving these initiatives forward.
It's always impressive to hear how much work you're doing in between board meetings. It's amazing.
Yes.
All right, any questions from the board? I have a question.
Thank you for both presentations. Excellent, amazing work that's being done. I had the good fortune about a year ago, I was on a ride along where I got to participate in that, observe, in a tabletop exercise, but a critical incident that had happened. And I was interested because you've referenced it again, because I think it's such a key opportunity for members. How do the outcomes of those exercises get communicated out to the larger community, or do they? Because there's lots of great learnings in that, lots of great feedback, and you know, in terms, especially with an integrated team. Does that get communicated out to the greater membership, or is there a way to do that?
Well, we have minutes from the meetings that are passed on, and then obviously any takeaways. So I know from this last one of the key ones is kind of a communication gap that we identified between some of our operating companies and the terminology they use for certain things that was causing confusion. So there, and then that's at the operational level for all of those operating companies, get together and try and, you know, align themselves, or, you know, so that we have some consistency. And that's done throughout any of the areas that have been identified through that tabletop, which is the whole premise of the exercise.
Yeah.
So yeah, that will be done internally through not only transit police, but the operating companies that we're working with, so that particularly for things like FIFA,
Right.
that any of those issues are identified and that we've got the most streamlined and consistent processes, not only internally here at Transit Police, but with the operating companies that we are working with on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. There's such good learning.
And in regards to system resiliency, so we've got a business case looking at building our critical incident training and response, and for all members throughout the organization to be trained.
So maybe to the chief and then Becky Graham, on the recruiting side, it's good to see the movement of the CSO folks coming up. Short-term issue, our friend here to the left is offering $20,000 incentive to other agencies, members and agencies. Could you maybe talk a little bit about, has that created an impact that you can see in our ranking file right now? Are other organizations, other police agencies having to meet the incentive that the VPD has put out there?
I don't want to speak for other agencies, but I holistically believe, much like us, everybody is looking at every option available to them in order to attract good candidates. We are currently in a situation with the Justice Institute where there's more demand than there's ability to recruit police officers right now. We are in a bit of a bubble section where we will, in the next year to 4 years, have a significant amount of people that will meet the retirement age numbers and factors. So we are looking at potential large amount of turnover within the Lower Mainland region. So I would say that, much like us, I think everybody is looking at any type of thinking or ways that they can recruit or make themselves advantages, as there's only so many people available right now, and there's only so much capacity to actually train new officers. So I would say that everybody is taking a look at different options out there.
So do you have concerns? I noticed there's a couple of members that are leaving to join the VPD. I don't know whether the exit interview is with regards to just the opportunity of working with the VPD, or the financial incentive was something, your take.
We definitely do exit interviews with everybody that's leaving the organization. We take that feedback in. For everybody, it's usually different reasons that's kind of unique to themselves. Not a problem that's solely being faced by us. It's definitely a problem that we're kind of seeing in and around regionally with our partners. We do have a group that we meet and we speak to. We do take everything into consideration. And again, for us, we're unique. We have very unique strengths. We need to make sure that those are well known, that they're sold, and that we're attracting candidates that value what we can uniquely bring to the table.
I think that comment, it is a very competitive market. And, you know, a lot of different agencies are offering different competitive advantages. We continue to examine those. I think at the end of the day, what Deputy Graham has stated is we want people to come because we're employer of choice, and we're doing everything to make our workplace, whether it's wellness, a modern police culture, to attract people and retain them within our agency.
But I think that's where the board needs to be kept obviously apprised, so that we need to adjust along the way, and wherever it is we support to create that type of atmosphere to retain staff, if policies have to change and so on, maybe be discussed. Probably sooner than better, because obviously there's other things in place too, just even with the date announced for the change in Surrey coming up. And yeah, there's just a number of things. I just want to make sure that it's kind of top of the agenda to deal with the board on, so that we're not caught unawares going forward. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I really like the idea that you're looking at that benefits brochure program. I think that's key to ensure your new recruits are fully engaged and feel welcoming as part of your team. The question I have is that I know you have that going forward. Have you thought about, or is there a need to level set some of those hires that you hired last year and the year before when this brochure wasn't available?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so the benefits brochure is created now.
Mhm.
And for your new recruits, but you've had some recruits in the previous years, and I wonder whether there will be opportunity for you to level set them of the benefits and retirements and support for their families.
Yeah, so the brochure is created and it's being handed out to existing employees as well as new employees. I should have brought some today to show for an example. There are a bunch of people around the office. I'll grab some on a break, but it's been completed, it's been done, it has been made available to each and everybody that we have. And it is part of the initiative package going forward for all their new employees.
Right. Maybe I just want to follow up. So there's a process where you just provide a brochure, and there's also a more of an integrated process where you actually have a discussion with the brochure. So I'm not quite sure what the level of brochure, because when you just provide a brochure, but the intake may not be there.
Yeah, so we do have a member that's kind of assigned to member wellness.
Okay.
And so he is following up with recent people, especially people that go through our JI or through the process. They do meet with them on a regular basis and kind of have those touch points. So he is following up with those members and make sure that ones that have been recent hired and still may not have the familiarity are getting touch base points.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thanks for that report. Very thorough. I appreciate your written report too. It's great to reference that. Thank you.
Maureen, just
Yeah.
one question. I'd read somewhere in the material that was delivered as part of the agenda package that we're still doing secondments. And I'm curious as to, and then the comments with respect to recruiting, and there was I think under the update on the strategic plan that Stephen provided as part of a late package to the board, that our percentage of strength, I guess what we call that, it appears to be lower this year than it was last year. And I'm just curious, is that sort of temporary or is that more structural in nature? I think it was 100% last year when we received the report, or maybe at the last report, and now it's at something like 96.6. And I was just curious about why there's that difference. Is it more temporal or is it something that's more permanent in nature?
It's a little more temporal. It's part of it. We're in an expansion period. So like we're looking to fill those expanded numbers, which we haven't yet, which will probably over the next little while affect some of these numbers that we're used to seeing. When our authorized strength has been steady for numerous years, now we're increasing it. It will have that net effect when we do supply some of these stats. What I'll say for the secondments and continue to kind of support us secondments is that's important to the membership, and it is a big part of the retention piece. People need to see that there is opportunities here, similar opportunities that they would have at other departments and situations. So we do have secondments. We do have secondments that are signed on agreements for terms. We have to continue to fulfill those as well as, again, part of feedback from members is the opportunities are important.
So I guess in response to what you just said, it seems to me that it might not be a bad idea when we have when we get approval for expansion, that the expansion numbers be shown separately from the existing strength numbers, so we get a better sense of how we're doing relative to our approved strength and how we're doing relative to recruiting and new strength. But I only share that to say that it's an important point, especially in light of the fact that we tend to feel resource constrained in any case. So
that's really good feedback. We'll look to implement it.
Anything else? Okay. Let's move on to 2.3, which is the strategic plan year-end report. Stephen.
Okay, well, so you have the latest document as part of the package. All the updates since the last mid-year report, which was provided in September, are highlighted in blue. There's a lot of key performance indicators and numbers included in this report. And it's also like a lengthy report as well. I think if there's anything I want the board to take away from this, it's really what are the trends we're seeing. So when you're looking at kind of the key performance indicators listed throughout, some of the trends that we're seeing, which I'm going to speak to, is crime being down. So overall, the volume of crime is down, but when you take into account the fact that passenger loads are quite a bit higher than they were a year ago, the rate of crime has dropped even more substantially. Despite that, one of the things we're looking at quite closely is perceptions of safety is also down. Now, when you look at the overall figure for perceptions of safety, that's an average taken of all 4 quarters, and it's an average taken across all modes of transit. So TransLink on a quarterly basis will release perceptions of safety on board trains, at SkyTrain stations, on bus and C-bus, and then at bus stops. So you get a bit of a breakdown at each of those locations. And you can even go even further in terms of a breakdown in terms of at a station level. So that's something we look at as well. But what this is it's rolling all those numbers together, and it's giving you an overall perceptions of safety rate. What I will say is that the drop we saw last year was really, it was in Q1 and Q2, which shouldn't be entirely surprising because that's when we saw some fairly high profile assaults that took place, which were well publicized by the media. In Q3 and Q4, we did start to see a rebound in terms of perceptions of safety. But overall, when you look at a year, we did see that kind of 3% drop. So, and that is something, it's actually it was the 3rd or 4th year we have seen that decline. So it's something we're watching quite closely. The first couple of years of decline was largely driven by COVID and feelings of safety about COVID. Now we're obviously focusing on perceptions of safety related to assaults and crimes against person. Oftentimes, one significant assault, which is publicized in the media, can have a very significant impact in terms of perceptions of safety just across the board. When you look at SkyTrain versus bus, the other thing I'll mention is that SkyTrain is generally lower than bus, and that really speaks to the need to have a high visibility presence on the SkyTrain system, which our CSOs are now assisting with. For mental health apprehensions, those fell. But when you look at the long-term trend, it kind of tends to go up and down on an annual basis. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a systemic trend or if that's just that natural variability we see on an annual basis. What was really positive last year is we saw a pretty significant increase in proactive mental health interventions. So you saw 10 interventions in 2022. You saw 32 interventions by our mental health liaison officer in 2023. That's the type of proactive intervention we want to be seeing. Those are individuals where we're consistently responding time and again to incidents on the transit system, to individuals who have mental health concerns, issues, and that liaison officer is then meeting with that client, ensuring that they have a mental health team established and trying to find out what supports can be established both ourselves and with our jurisdictional policing partners to assist that person on an ongoing basis. But it also really speaks to the demand for those services. So that's just one mental health officer at Transit Police. And when you see that 220% increase in terms of interventions, that just shows the need, I think, for more potential resources out on the system dealing with those mental health issues in order to address that. There is a newly generated chart within the report that shows calls for services and where they originated from. So it's showing the total number of calls received from our OCC from members of the public, the number of calls to the OCC, or I guess text reports using our text service, the total number of calls received from our operating partners, that would be Bus Company, Canada Line, and SkyTrain, 911 call transfers, and then on-view call volume. So on-view is when an officer is either, they witnesses the incident take place and they're there, or they're flagged down by someone close by to witness, and they're on scene like within seconds afterwards the incident has taken place. So within the strat plan, we're focusing our attention on view calls, and we're tracking both by volume and percentage of all calls, how that's tracking year over year. I will point out, however, in this chart, the overhead description, this is the one item, it was caught after we distributed the report. It does need to be adjusted because I was referencing this as being files generated from each of those call sources. This is calls for service, it's not police files. So when you look at text reporting, only about 50% of those text reports would actually generate a police file. A lot of those text reports would be responded to by our operating companies. And that just kind of depends on the nature of the call and what's being reported. So we will adjust the couple sentences above the disclaimer, just referencing what that chart is representing. However, that being said, the chart does show some, I think, very important takeaways. It shows that on average, our on-view calls remain relatively level year over year between 2022 and 2023. So the on-view incidents we're responding to was pretty consistent year over year. Similarly, the number of calls we received from bus or SkyTrain companies that remained relatively level. What we did see increases in was number one, transfers of 911. We saw an increase year over year. And then also we saw a pretty substantial increase in terms of text reports, which should not be surprising given all that additional advertising you're putting out on the system. So we had that more substantial campaign in the latter half of last year, where we had both temporary advertisements for about a year and a half. We have a lot of advertisements out on the system on buses, trains, and stations. We also have a lot of permanent deck link that's now been added. So those permanent decals that have been added to every second window of every bus across the fleet. So it's not surprising to see that increase in terms of text reporting year over year. Turnover amongst police officers, and we were referencing this a short time ago, and that's due to retirements and resignations, was 4.3% higher in 2023 compared to 2022. We recognize when we're developing the strat plan, this is a very competitive market amongst police agencies for finite resources. So it's not surprising to see that increase year over year. But now that's also why we've now engaged with, there's a couple initiatives underway this year. One is we have the contracted marketing firm in Dalma. We're looking at refreshing our recruitment campaign. We're also looking at retention measures within the organization. So how are we branding ourselves internally? And then the other item is we're working quite closely with TransLink on the EDI strategy. So they have dedicated equity, diversity, and inclusion resources within the TransLink enterprise. And so looking at the global equity, diversity, and inclusion benchmarks, which specific benchmarks do we want to focus our attention on at Transit Police? And likely out of the 14 or 15 categories, we're going to have 4 or 5. In our initial meetings with the team upstairs, equity, diversity, and inclusion will be, recruitment and retention will be 2 of the 5 categories. Those are kind of our 2 focus areas. We had a meeting, the most recent meeting was just a couple of weeks ago, and we actually have further meetings next week scheduled with them to talk about that. So there is a really heavy focus on recruitment and retention at the moment. And then with respect to training rates, so when you look at the overall figure, 78% to 80%, I mean, that shows a slight increase. But when you break it down by course, you do need to take into account it's not necessarily the same courses we're comparing. There's some overlap year over year, but there's some 2023 specific training courses that were required. There was digital evidence management, and there was also courses related to drug decriminalization. One course I wanted to draw attention to that showed a drop in completion rates was cybersecurity. So that's a unique course because it's the course, it's one of the only courses, if not the only one, that's administered to the TransLink e-learning system. And in 2023, we encountered some pretty substantial technical challenges in terms of our employees accessing that system. We actually had to go to our employees on several occasions with additional information, troubleshooting, getting access to that training portal. And then working with individual employees to get access. Moving forward, in order to address that reduction we're seeing, what's been put forward is that similar to all other training courses we provide to our employees, is we administer cybersecurity, the training provided on an annual basis under our own e-learning system, or we at least have direct control over the e-learning system itself. That'll just ensure that we're able to properly control both accessibility and then completion rates for 2024. And then the last key performance indicator I'll just reference, there's no numbers here yet, but files transferred from police agency partners. We worked quite diligently. I know our OCC, our Operations Communication Center, worked quite hard the last 2 years to initialize a new field. It's where received, where we can automatically track files that are transferred to us from jurisdictional police department partners. We started to receive that data on February 1st of this year. So while it's not included in the year-end 2023 report, you will start to see a breakdown of the data in the Q1, Q2 report for this year. And I think what I'll just do just to close off, just as a reminder, once the report is received, approved, it gets posted to our website. It goes to the next TransLink board report package, which is generally their meetings are heavily covered by media as well. So there's generally some pickup there. And then it's also sent to our representatives for the Mayor's Council agenda package as well. And I'll leave it at that and open it up for any questions.
Questions? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Stephen. Good report. The one in respect of the table that is in the earlier part of the report, there was some areas like number 1, crimes against persons. The change was reported as a percentage change between the 2022 ratio and the 2023 ratios, 22% drop in that particular ratio. And yet, as an example, if you go down to turnover rate in police officer strength, there was a change from 8.5% turnover to 12.8% turnover, and that was reported as a 4.3% change.
Right.
When in fact it was more like a better than a 50% change if you look at the ratios as opposed to simply the percentages.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that the better way to approach reporting would be a change in the ratios as opposed to sort of the absolute change in the numbers. So let's just say it went from 20% to 50%. It would be a 250% change, not a 30% change. You get the idea.
Yeah, no, that I guess it depends on whether or not you're showing it as a percentage, and best practice then is just to show the percentage change, as opposed to showing it as a decimal point, in which case then you're showing a percentage differential. And in fact, the first time I generated the strategic plan report, the first draft actually was showing the percentage changeover, but doing a percentage of a percentage becomes really confusing. That's not generally best practice. But if you were to do it as a ratio, where it's like 0.5 to 1, then yeah, we could definitely change that last column to a percentage then.
Because 4.3%, when I look at that number personally in the context of my concern as a board member, it's sort of it sounds like a manageable number. It doesn't sound like it's changed that much. But when I look at the actual change, the bump from 8.5% to 12.8%, which is 50% increase in the turnover rate, becomes much more concerning to me. So I recognize that it's some respects semantics, but in some respects it's not relevant to the decisions that the board becomes engaged with to ensure that recruiting and retention is given proper attention.
Mm-hmm.
So and there are a number of others like that here. So I guess my only comment is in respect of generating the next report for the board is have a look at those numbers and see it through the board's eyes as to what highlighted in a way that would help us understand where we need to direct our attention.
That's fair. Because even though it's 4.3%, it's also one of the few items that's in red because it's
and I appreciate
item.
the color coding was good as well. Like it sort of it drew my eye to that. I was thinking, 4.3 doesn't sound that bad, and yet it's red. And then I started looking at why, and I realized that it's in fact not 4.3. It's actually more like 50% if you look at it from a racial perspective. So that's one area, and the other area was sometimes we see things change because we take new actions to encourage the public to become more engaged in things like text messaging. And although the text messaging numbers went up, the crime rates went down, and so we're getting more action with respect to texts, but we're also seeing the trends being very positive in the context of the ratios that we're seeing around crimes reported per 100,000 boardings, and somehow they should be correlated a bit to say we're being successful in getting people to use text messaging, but we're also being successful in reducing the crime rates that people are experiencing when they're on the system. And I think that's kind of an important message for us to almost highlight. That text messaging is going up, but crime rates are falling. So in fact, it's having the correct effects.
Absolutely, and I think it also speaks to that perceptions of safety piece too, where we really need them to be correlated.
Yeah.
It's strange to see them going in completely different directions, where you have crime going down, but you have people feeling increasingly more unsafe on an annual basis, and that really needs to be addressed.
And I agree, and that's the third point I was wanting to make, is that the context of perceptions of safety. And the fact that last year it said 76% on average, and this year it was 73% on average, or something like that. But it almost seems to me that it needs to be refined to be more, point specific in time, like how did we do in the last quarter of last year versus the last quarter of this year? And if in fact there was a significant drop in the first and second quarters that dragged the average for the year down, I'm more concerned with us rebounding. And if the rebound effect was such that, it was 80% at the end of 2022 and it's 81% at the end of 2023, even though the average for 2023 wasn't as good as 2022, we're back to where we want to be, because the fourth quarter showed people having sort of recovered from the shock of whatever occurred in the first two quarters.
Yeah, I think we can probably show it on a quarterly basis moving forward, similar to the other charts.
Yeah.
Kind of show quarterly how it's been adjusting. I will say though, despite the bounce back in the latter half of the year, it's coming back towards maybe the 76-77% range. Whereas in 2017, 2018, we were in the 80-81% range. So it's positive to see it moving again in a positive direction, but I don't think we're necessarily where we want to be. I think we still want to continue to see that rebound even further this year.
So I guess building on what you just said, it seems to be then, a rolling average or quarterly numbers over a longer period of time would help us get a better perspective on whether we're at where we should be and whether we're at where we were historically. And it gives us a sense of the degree of need for attention, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I mean, it's not uncommon to see an inverse relationship between perception and fear of crime versus actual crime rates. That's consistent, throughout decades. I am interested in like the decrease on our system. If we know, and you may not know this, if it's comparable to what's happening with GVRD with regard to crime rates. We're seeing a reduction in crime against persons and property on the system, but what's happening, generally speaking, in terms of people's sense that they're on this, safety and perception. And I don't know, and I'm not asking you necessarily know this right now, but what's happening around the city and how are people feeling? And I think that's something we have to take into account. We can get really granular with this kind of data and not really have a lot of control over that greater visibility.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that offhand. I know that we actually are getting more granular in terms of saying like, okay, if we're seeing assaults declining or assaults remaining level, what are our jurisdictional police partners seeing relative to that specific crime type, to kind of see how we're trending relative to them.
Yeah.
I don't think
I think it's a mistake to get too tied to these things, have to be going the same. Like there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of information here that we want to understand better. Oh, Bill.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Great report. I actually like it. I'm really intrigued on your page 7 and 8 where you have KPIs and the column with all the green. So that shows a really good trend, and I really appreciate that. I think for next year, I wonder if you thought about on some of those KPIs where you can actually measure. Interested to hear where would we like to be in 2025 and 26 on some of those KPIs that we can control. And in particularly when it relates to employee turnover, diversity, and so forth. So those are things that I think we have an element of control. It'd be interesting to hear, okay, this is what the results are, but what's our target for ideally in 25 and 26 or a range, I guess, what might be helpful.
Perceptions of safety would be another, I think, good indicator as well, because we're having a lot of conversations with ourselves as well as with Translink to say, what initiatives can we put in place to, we don't have direct control over it, but at least to influence and start to pull that number back up again.
Yeah, just 2 general comments. So in terms of crimes against person, property, we are seeing decreases, although it varies in different areas across sort of the Lower Mainland. And then secondly, lots of dialogue, discussion within the enterprise and Translink and how we potentially can join together in terms of what safety campaigns we're doing throughout, and more planning and sort of coordination in terms of that messaging to the public.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to follow up on something that Carla said, because I agree with her 100%. What's fascinating about this, like when you're looking, I'm not going to talk about the whole region, but when you're talking about jurisdictional partners, for example, like in Vancouver right now, property crime is way down, violent crime is way down, but perception of safety is another issue. Because these things are driven by high profile public events. And I think sometimes we overestimate the public's ability to differentiate between police agencies. So you could have a shooting in Vancouver, you could have an assault on a bus, you could have somebody killed out in Surrey, whatever it is. Like different things will happen all the time in different regions throughout the Lower Mainland. But if you poll somebody and say, how are you feeling about public safety? They'll have heard about a shooting in Vancouver. Oh, I don't feel safe. Or they'll be feeling unsafe on things that have nothing to do with crime. Like they may walk through a SkyTrain station and somebody's yelling and screaming and it's not a crime, but they may not feel safe, or they may see an aggressive panhandler, not a crime, may make them feel unsafe, or a drunk person that's, causing an issue over here, it's not a crime. So there's all kinds of things that the police will deal with that are not crime related, but will affect your perception of safety. And then that whole regional piece as well. But generally speaking, the crime numbers in the region are pretty good right now.
Yeah.
But high profile incident can change that overnight.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at major SkyTrain stations, often what we hear about, and even when we were establishing the police officer program, we were evaluating each of those hub stations. Oftentimes, people's perceptions of safety was influenced by what they were seeing across the street. So because they don't just like appear on the platform, they have to actually walk into the station as they're crossing the street. If they see something across the street from the station that's concerning to them, that influences their perceptions of safety at the station itself. So those are ongoing conversations we have with TransLink saying, we can't just say, okay, here's our boundary and everything is perfectly fine at the station. So everything's fine in terms of impacts on perceptions of safety. We have to think about what's happening on the periphery around the station as well. And we're influenced to a tremendous extent by what's happening in the surrounding neighborhood.
One quick just another comment. I was pleased to see that the mental health apprehensions, we see that number going down. And correspondingly, we see an increase in referrals to partners in mental health through the mental health liaison. And I think that's a positive, should be highlighted. I know this wouldn't be on our mental health liaison, but do we have a sense of conversion rate? Like, do we know what uptick in terms of referrals occur when people are referred to different agencies? That wouldn't be something that I think that our officers are responsible for, but it's just an interesting, aspect that would be good to know.
Yeah, we could probably, I could speak to that a bit further for the next report.
Yeah, and I don't think it's something that we want to add to the workload of the liaison officer, but I just think it's interesting to know we're seeing less apprehensions, more referrals, and how fruitful are those referrals.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's a potential causation. Right now, it's just correlated. There's a potential correlation, but we don't necessarily know if it's cause and effect.
Are you guys using Health IM?
We're in the implementation stage right now.
So that maybe decrease apprehensions, because when you use that application, you can have a better understanding of, yes, should they be apprehended or not. So interesting.
Yeah, and even with Ben, who is our mental health officer, he has a lot of relationships with some of the persons that we deal with on a frequent basis. So just like Health IM, is that one, again, we haven't had enough data and had him in the role long enough, but certainly I think he's making a positive impact. And I know the comments I get from our squad members in terms of him listening to kind of when they're going to a call that might have a mental health component, and that when he, kind of attends, he's really able to, kind of have the time to have a dialogue with that person in crisis, and then also be able to determine if there are referrals, if they are working with someone. So really positive outcomes, but certainly we need more data to be able to make those linkages.
Right. Great work. Excellent. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate the report. It's great. All right. Next item on the agenda is the policy complaint. Number 2023-25128. So just a quick update on this one. We did receive additional information from the complainant. So we have to consider that additional information. So investigations in progress, and we'll hear about it in June. I think we expected to be able to talk about it today, but we've got some new information. So we'll get an update in June on that. Oh, great. Let's move on to other business. So finance committee reports.
Great, thank you. Just want to highlight.
It's here.
You talking, Sean?
Nope, sorry, just accidentally unmuted myself.
Great, so just quickly on finance, so we just, 2 items for more information, as part of the finance committee, we review terms of reference on an annual basis. There were no changes made, and the second item is that, we want to thank Director Murray Dinwiddie and acknowledge for his work on the board as he passes the baton from the past year to the incoming chair for finance. So I want to thank Director Dinwiddie for his work on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Over to, any questions for Bill? Okay, over to George for governance.
Thanks. The reports and the minutes are listed there. There's really nothing else probably to add other than the fact that the ongoing work around Indigenous initiatives has been very positive, and maybe later today we'll be talking about this, but I know a number of us have gone to the sessions of Guam First Nation last week as part of the immersion into the culture and community, which was very well done and certainly it's appreciated. And again, I think it points out that this isn't just something that's an ongoing standing item on an agenda. We actually action it through both you as the leadership side, but we as a board. And those types of activities are really important, I think, going forward. And just as an aside, this was thinking what Carla just was saying with regards to the mental health officer. I think it'd be really good for us as a board to actually hear from Ben at some point in a future board meeting, talk about what's happening, some of the new initiatives to help by him and so on. But it would be very useful, I think, for all of us to hear it in the same room.
Yeah, that's a great idea, George. Yeah.
So that's that.
All right, thank you. Next item up is, excuse me, Ecom Board of Directors. So George has been on the board at Ecom for the last couple of years. His term comes to an end in June. So we're part of a syndicate of other agencies that put forward a nomination, and this year it is New West that's putting a board forward. So it was sent into our email yesterday, right, Taryn? So there is a name there, so we can make the recommendation if anyone has any questions, concerns, or we can just go ahead and support the recommendation of the West.
I have a hard copy if anyone
Sure.
wants on it.
It's Mary Trenadu, who's with the New Westminster Police Board. And we got sent the link with the material. She's more of the 12 years experience in elected official and municipal work and so on. And also actually worked at Ecom. So I think it's going to be a positive situation to have somebody with some experience like that taking the role of the nominee from the syndicate. So I certainly move support for Mary's appointment.
Okay, that's great. Does anyone have any?
Just more, I guess, informational, but my understanding was that Ecom had sent us a letter prior to our last board meeting suggesting, maybe a better word, that George continue on as being the syndicate's representative on the board for another year. And I haven't heard anything more about that. And I'm assuming there's been some dialogue between within the syndicate about who should become the or who should continue in that role as a director on the Ecom board. Am I
Correct, yeah. So the syndicate is 5 members, right? And it has to be unanimous to do something like that, like extend it at Westmont.
Okay.
So New West wanted to put a board member forward.
all right?
So,
Thank you.
so they've done so, yeah.
In terms of our coordination with the other boards, once, should Mary be selected, is there any interaction, like would she be invited to our board to speak with us and anything like that?
Yeah, I'm not George has done a great job of keeping us up to date. I would assume Mary would do the same, that she would have reports back to the syndicate, but I'm not sure how it's worked in the past. Taryn, do you recall?
Yeah, I don't think it's mandated. As George did in the past, he coordinated the monthly updates that come. So she essentially would collect them and disseminate them to our board and the others in our syndicate. And then I know, George, you attended various board meetings of our syndicates to provide updates as requested. So if we ever want an update, I'm sure I could request that.
Yeah, I
And
think
she
we
would
should.
be happy to again.
I still have verses from attending some of those meetings. I know to answer Christina's question. There's a monthly update that's done by Ecom. Nancy is part of that. And it's very comprehensive with all the details, and we circulate it here. It does get sent. I send it to all the other boards so that are updated. I think prior to that, there was a bit of a vacuum. We really didn't hear much. There's just so much going on right now with Ecom and changes to the governance piece as well, that I think it'll be incumbent upon us to be asking the new representative to also update us and hold up the syndicate, so that we just don't go back into that situation where we don't hear anything
Yeah,
at
I
all.
agree. Yeah, I think we should set up that.
Because there's going to be
Yeah,
some
we can look at that.
substantial costs
Yeah.
ahead to all syndicate members.
Right. Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, let's get,
Especially banker.
we'll talk about that, Tara. Way that we can get a good update. Right, and thank you, George, for working on the e-com board. That was
Yeah,
much
my pleasure.
appreciated. You did a great job. All right, so are we okay with going ahead with the recommendation then with Mary
So
and
moved.
Catherine to do? Okay. All in favor? All right. Mary's got it. All right, so let's move to CAPG conference. So this conference is scheduled for August 8th to 11th in Halifax this time. So we do have budget to send one to Halifax for the CAPG. So if there is anyone interested in that, we can make the motion to approve the expense for that.
So I had the good fortune of attending last year, so it's a very useful conference. A lot of information there that I think we can bring. I mean, it's the association dealing, obviously, and Adam was there last year, actually, in your role from the BPB. And it's a really good place to be able to have a conversation with other police agencies. You'll learn a lot. There's always good takeaway value, so I certainly would encourage. I went last year, so I'm happy to have somebody else attend on behalf of the Transit Police this year.
Is there anybody that has interest right now, or we can always do that offline too? You have interest there, right?
I'm interested, but I communicated to Karen sometime in the last few weeks saying I was interested, and Karen had responded by saying there was somebody else interested as well.
Yeah, I know, George, you were interested as well, but as you noted, you attended last year. It's happy to let somebody else.
So I'm interested in
You're
going
interested?
if the board's prepared to approve
Yeah.
such attendance.
Anyone else? Can draw names if we have multiples.
Well, I'm prepared to defer as well.
That's okay. No, I think we can put that forward then, so. So we're good with the recommendation that Marie attend CAPG in the summer.
I'll make that note.
Great.
Sorry.
All in favor? Great. All right, last item is the BCAPV annual conference, which was just a couple of weeks ago. So directors Palmer, Dinwiddie and Palmer were all there. So I'm not sure if Sean's on the phone, I know, or Marie, are you giving us a quick update of what happened?
Yes, I can. Sean, I defer to you if you'd like to provide a report. Not there? So the conference was held in Vancouver at the Delta Marriott. And it was a well-attended conference. There were delegates from all of the police boards across the province, plus the chiefs of police and others, provincial representatives as well. It was a Thursday, April 11th, and Friday, April 12th dates. And I'll go over quickly the agenda that was covered. There was obviously a territorial welcome by Kelly White, who's a well-known Indigenous person locally, and did a great job in welcoming those who were at the conference and in sharing a song that was a welcoming song that we all participated in, and I felt worked very well in terms of just making people feel comfortable at the conference. Second session was policing in the era of reconciliation, and so there were a couple of First Nation members there, as well as two police service officers, one from the Delta Police Department, who's the Tsawwassen First Nation liaison, and Carla Baker from the Vancouver Police Department, who works in the area of reconciliation and Indigenous relations as well, along with Dr. Judith Sayers, who's on the BC First Nations Justice Council, and Boyd Peters, who's director with the BC First Nations Justice Council as well. I'm not, maybe Christina, you can help me with the names of the bands with which they're affiliated.
Yeah, Dr. Sayers is from the Chava and Boyd Peters is from Stadiums.
Okay. And so that session was very informative and helpful in understanding sort of some of the challenges being faced by First Nations in relation to their ongoing process of reconciliation, and just working in parallel with the police services that are in the province and police boards, along with just communities in general. So I found that a very helpful session. There was a session on the funding dilemma, moderated by Michaela Hayes from the Victoria Esquimalt Police Board, involving Deputy Chief Fiona Wilson from the VPD and Chief Constable Del Manic from BPD, Vic PD, and Glenn Lewis, who's the ADM responsible for police services. And it really was highlighting the fact that there's more demand than there is funding, and there has to be a lot of work that goes into determining where and how the currently available funding is distributed to create maximum effect, while at the same time looking for additional funding through channels that are available to the province and us, so that we can continue the process of enhancing public safety in the province. I felt that the session was, again, a very informative session. At lunch, John Lowe's, the constable of the West Vancouver Police Department, gave a presentation on the discussion paper that's being prepared by the BC Association of Municipal Chiefs of Police on regionalization. And one of the points that he made, which I thought was very interesting, I think he said that in Ontario, when regionalization occurred, it reduced the number of police services from 153 to 11. And so, and in conversation with, later at a different session, Del Manic from the Vic PD said that there are currently, as an example, 10 chiefs and numerous deputy chiefs overseeing police services in the Victoria Regional District, where there are 500 constables in total. So it gives you a sense of how the span of control can be so different across the country. And his point was that, is it really necessary to have 10 chiefs oversee 500 members, that idea? So it was an interesting conversation, and that discussion paper, I think, will be finalized, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but toward the end of the summer. So the intention is to circulate it as information, and no doubt there'll be opportunities for discussion in that context as well. It really relates to one of the recommendations that came out of the committee reviewing the Police Act, recommending that the province consider moving away from the RCMP and moving to a provincial force, which would be in essence a regional force within the context of Canadian police services. There was another session on the first day of the conference was public engagement in police boards, moderated by Laura Victoria from the Delta Police Board, and involved Menija Colabella, partner with Watson and Associates, who are the consulting firm overseeing the delivery of police board training for the province. And some of us have attended that training already. Martin Yusey, who is an associate vice president of university relations with UBC Okanagan campus, and Comfort Badukwa, is that the correct way to pronounce her name, with the Vancouver Police Board. And it really was a conversation about how police force should be in engaging with the public, and to what extent they're involved directly, and to what extent they oversee the process that's being delivered by the police service itself. And I thought it was very informative, and I think it helped me get a better handle on my need to be involved directly versus my need to ensure that it's being done in a way that represents a credible approach to public engagement. So I think it's something that we've been obviously wrestling with. I think that the fact that we're going to have a public meeting in June in the community will help to demonstrate our commitment to ensuring the community can be engaged and should be engaged in dialogue with the police board. And other boards are doing the same thing. And then the afternoon included a tactical training center field trip to, I guess it's the shooting range, is it that building?
It's called the Tactical Training Center.
Oh, is that right? So it includes the
All the
shooting
force
range. Yeah,
options.
right, okay.
And the range. Yeah.
And so there was like, I don't know, about 15 different technologies demonstrated at that center for the conference delegates to interact with. And I found it very helpful to understand and just see the refinement that the Vancouver Police Department brings to bear in relation to delivering services using technology to assist members in being effective in actually delivering public safety to the community of Vancouver. One area, body-worn cameras, and it kind of reinforced for me that body-worn cameras, although they sound technical in nature, are pretty straightforward. And Vancouver's developed, from my perspective, a system that reinforced for me the need to just move forward with it, just do it kind of thing, because it isn't that complicated. And if there are complications along the way, I'm not sure that waiting to implement it will forestall any of what's happening anyway. We'll have to just live and learn as we implement the technology. So it's something that I know we're going to be engaging with a discussion on that a little later. And so that was the first day. The second day, there was a session on the impacts of disclosure requirements. Delta Police and West Van Police were involved in discussing sort of the ramifications of the current disclosure requirements, which are adding a workload to police services, but are important in relation to ensuring that we're doing the right things the right way. There was a session on police governance, compliance and effectiveness support to boards. Katie Charlton, the assistant director with the policing and security branch with the province, made a presentation and responded to questions from the delegates that were present regarding the operation of boards and the fact that different boards operate differently. And in fact, what I received through that conversation with Katie was that the Transit Police Service board is seen as being a board that operates very effectively. So there's not a lot of problems from her perspective with the way that we operate as a board, including not only the board operation, but the committee structure that the board relies upon in relation to developing agendas for board meetings. And then the final session before the minister's comments during the noon hour break was board governance roundtables. There was 5 questions that were being answered or being discussed at 5 different tables around the room. And there was a facilitator and a note keeper that rotated from table to table to ensure that each table discussed all 5 questions. And there will be a compilation, a compendium of the comments that were received in relation to each of the 5 questions from all 5 tables made available to the delegates that were present at the conference through the BCAPB, and I'll circulate that compendium to the board here through you, Marnie.
Sure.
And then the minister was kind enough to make comments to the assembled delegates as sort of the final part of the conference at noon hour, and I think it was well received. He certainly highlighted the fact that the province has been significantly engaged in encouraging enhancement to public safety across the province through funding that's been made available through a variety of programs, including funding that's been available to the ECOM for the rollout of NextGen 911. So it seems like the province has an interest in ensuring that they act as a partner, if not a coordinator, in many of the things that are going on. But I would say that the information that I've received, particularly about ECOM, is that right now ECOM is seen as being a bit of a standalone agency, not necessarily directly under the control of the province. So it's an area that, from my perspective, leaves, coordination and jurisdiction somewhat in question. And I think it's something ECOM needs to pursue with the province as well directly, in addition to other organizations like the Chiefs and the BCAPB, encouraging the province to become directly engaged as well. So that was the conference. There was an annual general meeting held after the conference in the afternoon on Friday. And the two significant things that happened at the annual general meeting is that there were seven resolutions that were put forward by various agencies that were considered. I'm just going to go through them quickly. The most significant resolution was a resolution to amend the constitution and bylaws of the BCAPB to reflect a new mandate that was developed in part with the assistance of Watson and Associates in a planning session in January. And that resolution was approved. And one of the ladies present, who is a member of a board, I think in Port Moody, is a lawyer and had volunteered to undertake the work of drafting the Constitution and the bylaws for consideration by the boards that are members of the BCAPB. So we'll be seeing that over the course of the next couple of months as a board to consider whether we approve or with like further amendments to those, the Constitution and the bylaws when they're delivered to the BCAPB for distribution to boards. Part of that relates to funding as well. So there's a need for enhanced funding. I mentioned before the BCAPB runs on a shoestring and really needs more funding in order to do its job effectively. So funding formula will be delivered at the same time for our consideration. So there was a resolution on the sale and display of bear spray and other similar products designed for animal deterrence, but which is being used for conducting criminal offenses in the lower mainland. Particularly BPE put forward this resolution and it was adopted. So the intention is to encourage the province to put in place legislation that would limit the sale and display of that product, and particularly discouraging minors from buying it for the purpose of criminal activities. Consumption of illegal substances, the act that was adopted but wasn't actually put into effect because of an injunction that was issued by the courts. There's a resolution encouraging that injunction to be rescinded so that it can be so that the additional locations where drugs can't be consumed or displayed are expanded to reflect areas of concern to all of us, particularly in areas where children are present. That was adopted, and it requires the province to take action to challenge the injunction. Technology, Taser 10, which is the newest Taser apparently available and has been adopted in some jurisdictions around the world. Vancouver Police Board put forward a recommendation or a resolution that the province allow for Taser 10 to become a field trial in order to keep pace with advances in technology and increase officer and public safety. And that resolution was adopted. So the province will be considering how they manage Taser 10. There was a resolution regarding funding for the JIBC Police Academy, coming up with a more reliable approach to funding that doesn't put so much responsibility on the police services to fund the training for police cadets. And so that was adopted and will be going forward to the minister for consideration. And there was another resolution put forward by, I believe, the Delta Police Department, that recommended the province increase their annual allocation of funding to the JIBC from 1.9 or $2 million to $7 million, so an increase of $5 million to assist with mitigating the costs that are being incurred by local police services in funding the training of cadets to become police service members. And then the final one, sorry for taking so long here. The final one was really asking, and this was our resolution, right? Asking the province to take appropriate action to shorten the timeline in relation to investigations being undertaken by the OPCC and the IIO in relation to police complaints that are received. And so although there wasn't a specific timeline identified, it was basically saying that this should be done in a more timely manner. And I think that came back as a request to us because we put forward this resolution in March. The review committee of the BCAPB had reviewed it and asked us for more specific details around what time were we thinking of. And I'm not sure what happened, but it didn't get changed. So I'm assuming that there was a discussion that we decided to leave it as it was because we weren't sure of what time frame might be appropriate in the context of, I guess, the procedures that normally go on as part of the investigations. So that's going forward as a recommendation to the minister as well. And then finally, as the AGM, the general AGM terminated, and then there was an executive meeting at which a new executive was elected for the BCAPB. So the executive now is Laura Victoria, will be the president. She's from the Delta Police Board. Michaela Hayes is the vice president. She's from the Victoria Esquimalt Police Board. Bandy Pata is the secretary. I think she's from the Abbotsford Police Board. And Jim Cambridge is the treasurer, and I'm not sure which police board he's from. I think he may be from the Oak Bay Police Board. So that's the new executive, and so any communication we receive from here on in from the BCAPB will be directed to us through Laura Victoria, the new president. So that's my report on that content.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Questions for Murray? All right, so that was final item on the agenda. Our next regular meeting is June 14th at 8 a.m. So we'll call this closed at 10:02.